Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Our Lives, your weekly podcast where we talk about the things that will inevitably affect all of our lives. Now, this week we've got a very special guest. We're joined by my very dear friend and fellow podcast host, Daisy, one half of the Health and Safety Angels podcast. Welcome, Daisy.
Hello.
Today, we're going to talk about a combination of a couple of subjects, and that's death and tattoos.
So nothing to do with health and safety at all.
Everybody will be very relieved to know it's not about health and safety. No offence, you are a fabulous. And if anybody listening is interested in health and safety, the Health and Safety Angels is the podcast to go to because they make me enjoy health and safety. So the reason for this episode today is both Daisy and I have a few things in common. We have lots of things in common. If anybody's watching this, you'll notice we both have very weird coloured hair, and we shared many different hair colours over the years, haven't we, Daisy?
We have.
We're both very heavily tattooed, and we've both lost a parent. So it's a subject that kind of goes hand in hand. Daisy and I met a decade ago. Daisy brought the first tattoo convention to North Wales, which was fabulous. So memorial tattoos, Daisy. You've got memorial tattoos, as have I. What have you gone for to sort of celebrate the life of somebody that you've lost?
So I've lost both my mum and dad. Amongst other people, but most significantly. So I've got tattoos to both my mum and my dad. My dad went first. So his tattoos obviously came first, as it were. But I have one for him. Well, both of them, actually. I took like a sample of their handwriting and then had that tattooed on me, which is amazing that they can do that they can literally... They'd be great in like for doing forgeries and stuff like that, because they're so similar in that sense. It's crazy. But so I have one on just kind of over my heart, which has my dad's name. So I actually took that off like the last card he ever wrote me. So it says Dad with a little cross. And then I also got a little kiss. And then I also got a bee, because my dad was from Manchester. So the kind of Boddington's Manchester bee type thing. But the thing with that one is that, where's your heart, Vicky?
It's on your boob, Daisy.
Underneath your boob. So yes, my tattoo is on my boob. So some people think that I must have some weird kind of
daddy issues.
Some daddy issues, yeah. Which, of course, not at all. But you don't go around with like written instructions as to what all your tattoos mean and why you've stuck them on that part of your body. I mean, I have one which I don't know if I can show it, but without trying to get it on the camera. So I've got on my hand there, I've got 1949, which is the year both of my parents were born. Some people go, "Is that your PIN number?"
We've been friends. We've been friends for a very long time, and I didn't like to ask.
Did you not know that?
I think you probably did tell me, but then I did.
Random. I'm so useless. I cannot remember my banking details, so I will just tattoo.
I'm going to throw it out there. As often as I forget my PIN number, it's probably not a bad idea, which has probably made me think, is that Daisy's PIN number? Yeah, I've never managed to swipe your cards, so
no. And people do ask me that, and I'm like, no, not at all. But I think generally, when you have tattoos, people do ask you the kind of same old questions, like, what do they mean? Do they all have meaning?
They do.
Will you regret them and all that? What are you going to look like when you're 80? Blah, 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 all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And I think so. We've taken slightly different routes on the memorial tattoo. So I lost my dad and I lost my 9. And my story relating to this, so I went down the portrait route. So I have a portrait of myself and my dad, me when I was a baby. Then I have another portrait on my arm. I was in a pub one night and this guy comes over to me, random stranger, and he's like, oh, Elvis. And I was like, oh, yeah, Elvis. I wasn't thinking about on and on about how like, well, that's really why are you telling me? Well, I noticed that you had a big Elvis tattoo on your arm. And when I looked, it's a tattoo, it's the portrait of my nine. And I had to say to him, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's not Elvis. That's my dad, Bram." He was absolutely mortified. I thought it was really funny. And I keep checking with people now. Do you think this looks like Elvis?
Did she have any resemblance to Elvis?
No, but in his defence, obviously he was three sheets to the wind. And it's because she had like a 1940s bouffant hairstyle, and the photo's not very difficult. So I imagine the guy might not have had his glasses on, probably drank about 12 pints at this point. It could have, through squinted eyes, looked a bit like Elvis, but he was mortified. He apologised continually for the rest of the night. I thought it was really funny, but not everybody shares our somewhat unique sense of humour.
No,
we can
exactly.
laugh at those
No,
things.
and I think that also, like, I remember when I was like getting some of them done, you know, I also have a bit of a weird one. I have a gorilla on my leg, and that gorilla represents my dad, obviously, because my dad was very hairy. He used to do gorilla impressions, obviously being hairy, and he did a really good gorilla impression. So I remember getting this gorilla tattoo and saying to the tattooist, please, can you make the actual tattoo is black and white, and it's a very good gorilla tattoo. But can you make the eyes blue? Because my dad had blue eyes. And he said, what do you mean your dad had blue eyes? And I'm like, well, he's dead, and this is for him. And he was suddenly
things.
Conversation suddenly changed, and it became like, oh, I'm so sorry. And it's funny, isn't it? Because when you say someone's died, they always say, I'm so sorry, as if it was their fault.
Like, yeah, you're like, it's okay. It wasn't your fault.
People die. It's going to happen to all of us.
They do. And this podcast, as you know, we've discussed this many, many times. This is about sort of almost a crash course in adulting. These are things that are going to happen. And it's being prepared for them. It's sort of understanding them. And I think this conversation today is perhaps a more light-hearted look at what's going to happen. But it's actually, people shy away from this stuff. And actually, we could use it as celebrations. And I think our generation, because we're both 40 plus postage and packaging, the pair of us, we're going to start seeing more and more people now going down the memorial tattoo route.
Yeah.
Me and my Elvis tattoo, you and your dad boob tattoo, and your gorilla tattoo. Yeah. Just as an FYI, Daisy and I actually have matching tattoos as well, don't we?
Oh, we do, yes.
We do.
I was like, which one is it?
Which one? I was going to say the late great, but she's actually very, very much still with us. Dolly Parton.
I was going to say Doris Day, but that was our next one.
That was our next one.
Yeah.
Don't get ahead of yourself.
Yeah, Dolly Parton's still very much alive. In fairness, she pickles herself in formaldehyde, so I think she'll probably be alive for decades to come.
She may have to get a Daisy and Vicky memorial tattoo.
Well, yeah. Well, maybe, yeah, absolutely. Go on, Dolly.
Maybe that. Go on, Dolly.
But no, I think the thing you said about tattoos in the next generation. So my nephew, who is how old is he now? Oh, 23, I think he is. He's got one tattoo, and his first and only tattoo is actually around like the kind of the top of his arm, and it is numbers. And it's actually coordinates, and it's coordinates of where it's in dedication to my stepfather, and it's actually coordinates of where he died.
Oh.
So if you put those coordinates into like Google or something, it would pinpoint where my stepfather died. And that's the only tattoo he has, but obviously it's just numbers. So to the rest of the world, it means nothing. And he does get people who ask him, well, actually, no, it's not around, actually not around the top of it. It's around his here. So it's around his forearm. So people see it more frequently. And people do say to him, like, what does your tattoo mean? And then obviously he explains, but it literally is one of those things that to him, it means something. To the rest of the world, it's almost invisible. You know what I mean? It's not a glaringly obvious kind of, you know, oh, gran and the dates that they died and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The sort of RIP kind of, because I think that quite old school tattoos used to be like that, but I think
Yeah.
it's also subjective now, and I think we between us don't have a particular style. It's very, very eclectic, and quite a lot of my tattoos mean absolutely
Yeah.
nothing. But I think a lot of people still, and I still get this, is they want to attribute meaning. It's like, what do they mean? And I was like, I just wanted Dolly Parton on my arm. It means absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But I think if you are of a more sensitive persuasion, be careful in your choosing of a memorial tattoo, because people will think it's Elvis. They will say, why do you have a dad boob? They will ask you questions that, if you are perhaps not as hard shelled as perhaps we are, that does have them the potential to upset you. So I would just give that word of warning.
Oh, definitely. And I think with any tattoos, be prepared for people to ask questions as well. If they're not just like a pattern and someone can see that it's just a pretty pattern
Yeah.
or something like that. If there's anything that's a bit quirky, people will ask. I mean, the amount of times, and I'm sure you're the same, where people have actually physically grabbed my arm or something and looked at it, or they've taken a picture of my legs or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember working out in the Middle East and going to like this sort of corporate event, which was at a MotoGP, and literally people were asking to have their picture took next to me, because over in the Middle East, to find a woman with tattoos, basically kind of unheard of. So it was really, certainly back then anyway. So it was like a real kind of like, wow. So for some people, as you say, I mean, I think if you're, I don't know. I mean, maybe in general, if you're going to get something like that, you have to be prepared for people to ask questions, I think. I mean, as much as you might not want it, it's like, for example, where people comment on like my hair or something like that. If I didn't want people to notice me, I wouldn't have purple hair.
Yeah, I agree to that to a point. I forget that I have tattoos.
Oh, God, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I forget, and then I wonder why people are looking, and
Yeah.
then it dawns on me. But that's always going to happen, because you have, in effect, just drawn on yourself permanently for life. I used to tell the kids off for drawing on their legs with felt when they were little, and one of them pointed out to me, "But you do it," and I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm a massive hypocrite. I'll just shut up."
And yours don't wash off in the bath. So.
Mine don't. They definitely don't. Okay, so talking about tattoos and death and the memorial. So there's this company in Ohio, and their service is, when you die, they will send your funeral director some kind of special kit, and they will cut out your tattoos, and you ship them off to this company in Ohio, and they will, I don't know what they do, them pickle them, dry them out. I'm not quite sure. They turn them into this parchment stuff, and then they put them into museum grade acrylic as wall art for to hang up in the family home.
Yeah.
Any thoughts? Because
I have actually seen this. I went to a museum in Philadelphia. I think it's called the Muta Museum or something like that, which is like a macabre museum. And I remember that I think they had tattoos from like a serial killer, or, you know, someone who'd been in prison or something, where they'd done that where they'd literally kind of removed the skin. The thing is that I can see how it sounds really weird and like gross and all the rest of it. However, it's just like, I guess it's a sort of form of taxidermy or something like that, probably how they do it. But I just think that it's I mean, I remember, for example, you know, when people have died in the past, people sort of cutting out like a lock of their hair.
It's a bit different. A lock of someone's hair to actually like a huge chunk of skin. I'm going to be honest with you. I was researching this, and I was eating a McDonald's breakfast at the time, double sausage and egg McMuffin, and I had to stop eating because it made me feel really queasy. It actually made me feel sick.
To be honest, I don't think it's not something that I would be like, oh, hey, let's hang it on the wall or whatever. But I think that, you know, I don't know. I can
Is it not a
understand.
bit Silence of the Lambs?
I don't think so. I can see why people would do it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you might keep someone's ashes in a jar on your mantelpiece, for example. I mean, basically, that's just a dead person in a box, you
Yeah,
know?
true.
And some people, I mean, both with like my mum and my dad, for example, with their ashes, you know, we have sprinkled those ashes, you know. In fact, we still take, is this okay to say this about the
Yeah,
ashes?
it is. Absolutely. Just say it.
So basically, when we're going to somewhere that would have meant something to our parents, we take a little bit of their ashes with them. So either somewhere where they'd been to before, or somewhere where we had like childhood memories of going to that place with our parents, we take, as in me and my sisters and my brother for that matter, take little
Bits
Tupperwares.
of them.
Tupperware.
And then, have you ever had any mishaps with said
Oh God,
ashes?
yeah. I've had my mum in my mouth twice.
And that's something we didn't think we'd hear on this podcast, but there
No.
you go.
Yeah, because actually, like when the wind blows, and it's literally just like ash from an ashtray. So yeah, but I think this is the thing with death, is that death is obviously a very serious and solemn thing, but also if you look at it from the other point of view, that's a celebration of life as well. I can imagine in those settings, if my parents were looking down on us, and I'm literally, you know, I mean, like recently, for example, took a bit of my mum to Venice and dropped a little bit of her in the Grand
Very
Canal.
nice.
And obviously my mum being sort of half Italian, and she's been to Venice, so it was nice to be able to sort of take a little bit. I don't know, it might have been her big toe that I took. I don't know which bit it was. But
Did you have to pay extra on Ryanair to take a bit?
no,
Did you
no,
book a special seat for
thankfully.
your
I
mum?
don't know. You potentially are meant to, I don't know. Maybe you're meant
Ooh.
to disclose that. I don't
If
know. Maybe
anyone's
I'm,
listening and knows the answer to that, please let us
yeah.
know.
But yeah, so and then the wind just changed, and yeah, it just kind of blew across my face. So yeah.
Yeah. So yours is a yay for the kind of handle
I
up the
think
styly.
it's not a yay. I'm not going to say to my son, feel free to, you know, pickle bits of me in the jar that you like or anything like that. But I could see why some people might want to do that.
I mentioned it to my daughter in the car, and she went, "Oh hell no! Do not even think about that. Another one of your weird ideas." I was like, "It wasn't like I've just run it past you," but she was like, "Oh, absolutely not. That will not be going up in my house."
I think the other one, speaking about ashes, of course, is because when I used to have the tattoo studio, one of the things that we got asked a couple of times by people was, could they have their ashes, and not just ashes of relatives, i.e., pets. Yeah. Tattoo.
Oh,
So what they're trying to basically say is, you know, you open up the skin, and then in the ink you mix in the ashes, and then you put that in. The problem is with that,
right.
there's kind of two major issues. Well, there's probably
Yeah, there's quite a lot of issues with that. If you're
well,
being
yeah.
really honest.
The ones I can think of are,
Yeah.
one, potentially those ashes are contaminated with something else that was in there beforehand. So,
Yeah.
you know, you might think it's Snoopy the dog, but actually you also have Penelope the hamster mixed in as
Yeah.
well.
Or if it's family member, you could have Beryl down the road in there too.
Yeah.
You know, that's a thought.
Can we pause?
Yeah.
Are you able to edit this?
Yeah.
So, like I say, I think for me, there are probably three, you know, these kind of three weird reasons. One, that you have the potential for that cross contamination with other things.
Yep.
And one of the other ones is the fact that it's hugely unhygienic. I mean,
Well, I knew you'd end up bringing some kind of health and
sorry.
safety into this podcast.
I've got,
I just knew that that's what you'd do. But you're right, though, because the ink is very, very thin. But surely ash is grainy and has the potential to, I don't know, that just sounds like an infection waiting to happen.
Oh, I mean, I would imagine that probably there's lots of occasions where it hasn't led to an infection, but the chance of actually getting any of the ashes in the tattoo are slim to none. Because as you say, if you put something heavy in liquid, it sinks to the bottom. Okay, so there is no way, it's not going to dissolve in there. It's not like they're stirring it for hours to try, do you know what I mean? So it is really more, I think if somebody was prepared to do it, which I don't know, as I say, when I had the studio, it was a hard no from us. But I would imagine there are probably tattoo studios that would do it. However, I think the chances of you actually getting any of the ashes in your tattoo, but maybe psychologically it feels good.
Well, do you know what they'd be better off doing, Daisy? Standing with their mouth open with a bunch of ashes on a windy day.
And it could get inside you that way.
And that's kind of almost a surefire way of it working, potentially.
Yeah. Well, the weirdest one was the first time we did sort of some ashes for my mum, as in me and my son did it. The wind changed and it blew all over him as well. So yeah.
Do you not check which direction the wind's going at any given moment?
Well, kind of, but you know, I'm not clever exactly in some areas of life, but perhaps not ash scattering.
Yeah, maybe that's not something you should take up as a full-time hobby or anything like that. Hopefully, no. I don't know what my dad used to joke about wanting to be thrown on a compost heap when he went, and of course then he died really young, and you were like, well, yeah, that's not exactly a plan because it's illegal. But yeah, so my mum said to me, when she goes, she wants to be put into a firework. You're going to love this. Your health and safety brain's going to be going. So be put into a firework with my dad's ashes. Obviously, her cremated first because she wouldn't fit in a firework. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah, that would be a large rocket to squeeze her in.
Mix both the ashes together and put them up in a rocket. And I said to her, that sounds really dangerous to me, you know, and I'm not risk averse in any way, shape, or form. So then I Googled it, thinking, oh, you know me, my little ADHD brain going, oh, there's a business there. We could get people's ashes. And she said, actually, there's a company that does it for you. They will create memorial fireworks. So I told her this. I said, oh, yeah, there is a company that does that. Because, again, it's those open conversations we, you know, quite happily talk about it. And then she went, oh, yeah, I don't just want it done anywhere. I want it to be in the middle of the sea. And I was like, are you trying to kill me? Surely that's not safe.
Well, it's probably safer than on land. But I would say, is she in her inheritance leaving you enough money to buy a yacht so that you can get out there I mean, you can't just go on the ferry across to Dublin and suddenly let off a firework.
Well, this is what I thought. I thought they're going to check my bags. I'm going to have I'm going to have a rocket explosive. This would be worse than the time. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. This would be worse than the time that we went to Blackpool Tower and there was a lovely Babycham glass. And I said, oh, isn't that pretty? And I've got a thing for glasses. I didn't steal it, by the way. One of the kids put it in my rucksack and I got searched going into the pleasure beach and it looked like I'd nicked a Babycham glass and I hadn't. That would be, but I think having an explosive on a boat would be worse than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think it's a really good idea. Actually, I like the. I with me. So I've made a will. Have you got a will, by the way?
Yeah, but my kids' inheritance, as I keep telling them, is that giant cupboard full of plastic carrier bags because they're worth 60p each now. I keep buying them from the supermarket and not getting rid of them. So the largest portion of their inheritance is a huge cupboard full of Aldi bags. I have got a will.
Okay.
I have got a will.
I have a feeling whatever your funeral wishes are may be ignored if that's the case. Probably one of those Aldi bags.
Well, see, I've looked into quite a few different things. And one of the things I looked into, so this may not come as a shock to anybody, Daisy and I can be quite macabre and slightly alternative at times in our thinking. I Googled body farm, donating my body to the forensic body farm, which I think, someone's going to correct me here, I think it's somewhere in Sussex or somewhere.
Okay.
And it's that book series the body farm.
Yeah.
And you can go down and they'll roll you up in a carpet and put you in a field, or they'll bury you and put 20-day maggots on you or something like that, so that they can determine when they do find bodies what the different effects of different weather has on them and different conditions and stuff like that. And I thought, oh, that could be cool. And then I went off that.
Yeah, because you have to think about how that would feel for the kids, being like, oh, mum's wrapped in a tarpaulin in a field somewhere.
Well, yeah, let's see when they find out their inheritance is a bunch of carrier bags. they might not be that bothered, to be quite honest.
Well, I have got a will, and in my will, usually it kind of, you can put stuff in there. You can.
Yeah.
I remember there was a letter thing that they talked about that you can like add in and basically go through like your entire wishes of what you want to happen. But in mine, it does say that I'd like to be buried, because that's something
Really.
I've always wanted to like have a proper burial with a proper gravestone, headstone, etc. And obviously, I am a Christian, so that is something that is, I mean, the chances of by the time I die, whenever that might be, let's hope another 40 years or whatever,
Yeah.
The chances of getting a slot in a graveyard is probably slim to none. I'll probably have to be shoved in with a few other people.
Yeah.
You know, I think
that's so extra of you, Daisy, wanting to be buried.
I know.
I can't believe we've never had this conversation.
But then you see, then there's a proper place. You see, one of the things I struggle with my mum and dad is that there isn't a place to go to. So you constantly just have that, like, oh, you're thinking about them. But sometimes it would be nice to just take a moment. I mean, and I do take moments where I just think about them. But it would be nice to be able to go somewhere and just sit and go, you know, like people have benches and stuff like that. It'd be quite nice to go and sit and be like, this is where I just think about mum and dad, or not, let's say just think about them, but I have this moment of pure quiet where it's
grounded in that place. No, I can completely agree with that. And I think that was part of the reason I got the tattoo of my dad, because he was cremated, so there is no burial place as such. But yeah, I can't believe you and I have never had this conversation.
Well, I guess it's not top of the list. It's usually like, you know, how's your week been and all that. We don't tend to go
very true.
When you die, what do you want to be done with you? Just in case I need to know.
Well, I feel like I know now.
Well, I saw one on TikTok recently, and it was who would your 6 pallbearers be?
Oh, I don't think I know 6 people.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? And also, it works. You have to think, well, when am I going to die? If I die, I guess if it works if you did it right now,
if I did it right now, they'd probably have to pay. They'd just have to put me on the trolley. In all honesty, they would just have to put me on the trolley, and wheel me in, because I don't think I know 6 people. I certainly don't know 6 people that I think are strong enough to carry a coffin.
Yeah, and I think they are probably heavier than we. I'm trying to think now. I'm trying to remember. Like, for my mum, no, my mum definitely got carried in. I can't remember with my dad, actually. He might have been carried in, yeah, and then he sort of stayed at the front of the church. But it is, I saw it and I thought, that's who on earth would be?
Earth? I'd be one for you, Days, if you go first. I suspect out of the 2 of us, it'll probably be me. But
which end do you want, though? Would you want head or feet? Because my feet are massive.
I definitely want to go near your feet. Your great big size 10s. No thanks. I'll go with the head end. Thank you very much.
I know. But yeah, I was thinking about that. I guess immediate family, but I kind of a bit like you. I don't have a massive.
No.
You know.
I think they can just also, and we're going to talk to. So in one of a couple of the episodes, actually, we've got Jacob, the Yorkshire funeral director, who talks very honestly and openly about what happens when somebody dies. Because I think it's that, again, I know we're sort of having a more light-hearted moment about it today, but it's actually really important to know that, because generally you only find out when it's too late and actually sort of further impacts people.
Yeah.
they do direct cremations. So, and my mum's got a bit of a bee in a bonnet about this as well. Sorry if you're listening, Mum. Is she doesn't want the direct cremation because she's heard that you come back in a jiffy bag. She doesn't want to be sent back in a jiffy bag.
I wonder how much she'd weigh second class sign for.
I don't know, but imagine that split coming through. Your postman would be traumatised, or the dog got hold of it and opened up the packet or something like that. But with the direct cremations, and I've actually seen a TikTok about this, and I was going to duet it and give my unwarranted opinion, because you know me, Dave, you and I both love giving our unwarranted and unasked for opinions about pretty much everything and anything.
Yeah.
And this woman was saying, don't get a direct cremation. It's not fair on everybody else. And I just thought, actually, is it for you or I or anybody else to tell anybody else how they want to go? I don't think it is. But what I do think with the direct cremation, and I remember this in my dad's funeral, is I am still traumatized. And the subsequent funerals I've been to, that purple curtain, that bit, it's so in the crematorium that's local to us. It's a nice little venue. I mean, I probably wouldn't want to spend a lot of time hanging out there, no more than necessary. But it is the bit you go through this whole service, and then the coffin's at the end, and then at the last bit, this purple curtain comes round, and that for me is the worst moment. And I think I mean, assuming that anybody's at my funeral, that bit for me, and I think direct cremation is not a bad way to go. I think it's efficient. It's kind of, but also what it does allow people to do, and the plus side of it that I've seen is they can then have a memorial, which is more of a party, and it's not in a crematorium with a pub afterwards or whatever. So I think you can have a party, a memorial, which would be a really nice celebration, as opposed to, I think people struggle to move away from the traditional ideas of things, I think.
With I remember my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, who I absolutely hated, but he died. And I remember the curtain bit there, and that was really weird because I was only quite young, and was the idea that then he was immediately being burnt. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, ugh, I don't know.
Yeah, do you know how weird it is, Dave? I don't have curtains in my house, and I never have.
Really?
I don't have curtains in my house. I also, I don't like the smell of fresh flowers, because my dad passed away really young. So of course he was at 44, same age as I am now. Just as an FYI on who's going first. So the whole house was filled. And when I say it was filled with flowers, you could not move for flowers.
Yeah.
And then there was a knock at the door, and I answered it. And it was the interflora, or whatever florist it was. He came and he went, oh my God, it must be a great celebration with all these people sending you flowers. And I was like, yeah, my dad's dead. And again, my sense of humour, the poor guy was mortified. But it does make you think, perhaps if you're delivering a lot of bunches of flowers, or these beautiful ornate things, maybe you should not automatically assume it's not. So I can't bear going into a florist, because the smell just reminds me of that, because the whole house was full of them. And I don't have curtains. I always have blinds, or as you can see now, it looks like I'm sat in the dark because I have nothing at all.
Oh, no, you just have you just have plants covering
plants.
Yeah,
always the plants.
That's really great, because that shows the trauma of that, isn't it? That's come out that way. Yeah.
I often think of, again, because I do think about death probably perhaps more than I think when you've been through it young, you do have not a sense of morbidity, but you do, it's something that creeps into your psyche more than perhaps somebody that's never ever experienced it. I think about, what songs would I want played at my funeral?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So have you got this in your will then? Is this one of your directives?
No, but that is, I did speak to them when I prepared my will, and I did speak to them about things like that, about like what, more specifics, and like music and stuff like that. And you can like identify who you want to like carry the coffin, and who you want to speak, and all that kind of stuff. I know with my mum, for example, so when she was planning, my mum had planned her funeral probably when she was about 40. And as children growing up, we regularly were reminded of what she wanted at her funeral, which obviously is, my mum was a very, very flamboyant, dramatic person. And so I don't think that she saw it in anything negative. I think she just kind of was like, well, you know, she loved music. I mean, some of both of my mum and dad's funerals were filled with music. So we had some of my dad's favorite songs. So we had things like Hotel California, for example, playing. My mum, we sang Mama by the Spice Girls, like the whole congregation sang Mama by the Spice Girls at my mum's. So it was, my mum was very much sort of like planned what she wanted, and we kind of had an idea. And actually, when she then died, we also found some like poems in a book. So we all kind of identity, like kind of pages folded down and stuff. So it was like, oh, okay, well, these obviously were significant in some way. Do you know what I mean? But I think that, coming back to the point you were saying about the, what did you call it? Something cremation when there's no one there.
A direct cremation.
Okay, so basically both my mum and dad had those.
Okay.
So effectively we had services beforehand.
Yeah.
And then the day after they both got cremated. So we had a church service for my dad. And then the day after in the morning, he was cremated with no one there. And then the same with my mum. So my mum's was slightly different because of the fact that it was during COVID. And so obviously there was restrictions on everything, including my brother being able to come over for the funeral in Australia. So we ended up having to Zoom call the funeral, which is just absolutely hideous, you know. And the crazy thing was, even that kind of had like a slightly comedic twist, because I put my phone up on like this podium thing so he could see it. And then we all walked out and I'd left my phone, and Michael was going, are you there? Anyone left?
Can you imagine being the person who's left behind at a funeral? All they can hear is this disembodied voice coming from somewhere.
I know, because you kind of like get wrapped
don't
up
leave
in
me here.
No, I know.
You know how terrifying that can be.
Yeah. But I was talking to someone the other day about, why do we not allow children to go to funerals? Like, because obviously, like, my son didn't go to either of my parents' funerals, and it's I don't know why we don't allow. Do you know what I mean?
I've got a theory.
Taboo thing, isn't it?
I think it's a very, I'm going to say, white Western European thing, perhaps even a British thing, and I don't know enough about other cultures to say, but I think it's like I think Brits are emotionally stunted. I'm going to just say it. I do think we are. And I think you're right, there's a taboo to it, and we don't like talking about death, which is why, again, with this podcast, I just want to talk about all the things that make people feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we need to have adult conversations. But actually, this reminds me of a story. So we used to have a pet rat, and called Jessie. Beautiful, very, very clean animals, very lovely. And my daughter must have only been, my daughter's very matter of fact. I don't know where she gets it from. Can't possibly think. And my sister-in-law at the time, she, her and my brother hadn't been together too long. And my sister-in-law's lovely, very sweet woman. And the rat, we'd have to take it to be put down because they don't live forever. They don't live that long. And I told the kids, obviously, and then my sister-in-law came round and she said, oh, she'd gone to a better place now. And my daughter looked at her and she went, well, she hasn't, she's dead. She was just, because I'd always said, because I just thought there's no point in lying. And I said to my mum, bless her, I said, I've got to be honest with kids about death, Mum, because what happens when you die? I'm going to tell them you've run away to live on a farm.
Yeah, can we visit?
Can we visit? But that's it. I think, but maybe that is just a me thing. I think I'm very matter of fact about stuff.
It's very difficult, and the reason why I think for my dad, I think my son would have been like 4.
Yeah, wasn't he?
So I really didn't think that was appropriate. I think for my mum, he would have been 6, so a bit older. and much more aware of what was happening in terms of her being ill and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think because I'm a single mum, so we would have sat together at the funeral, and with it being COVID, you had to sit in households. So obviously I was literally sat in a chair on my own, you know, which again was just bloody horrible. But had I had him there, then obviously when I break down, there's no other adult to help him. And that's so if
agreed.
then maybe the partner could have been like, oh, you know, and sort of kind of put his or her arm around us and being like, you know, oh, it's okay, you know. I think that's probably why, because also, I don't know if this is going to sound really horrible, but it was my mum.
I agree.
I needed that for me. I needed to step away from being a mum myself for a moment and allow myself to be able to just
be a daughter.
Yeah. And I think because afterwards, when like you get upset afterwards and they see you, I've never not cried or, you know, never hidden anything like that from him. I knew that he would get upset as well. So then we were kind of, I felt then I had to console him, whereas actually I was the one who equally needed consoling. Do you know what I mean?
No, I think that's a really, really valid, very valid point. But to circle back, to use corporate terms, I know how much you love that, is what are the songs that you would want? Have you got 3 songs? I mean, you have to limit yourself to 3.
Well, no, because I can't remember how many like my mum and that had. I know she had a Queen song as well. And my dad had several actually. Yeah. But there was a song that you won't even know. That's the thing. One of it is by a band called Creed, who's actually like a Christian rock band. And it's not that they're because they're Christian that it was the crazy thing is, right, it's actually the entrance theme to one of my favorite WWF wrestlers as a kid. Do you know what I mean? That's so weird. And it's a song called My Sacrifice by this band called Creed. And it's an amazing song. And it's one of my favorites to this day. But that was like, it's all about like, it's got like a slightly religious, but nothing like, oh, happy clappy Jesus or anything. Because it's like almost like it's a rock song, you know. But it speaks about like, basically, you know, this person is having like is being used as a sacrifice, and it was like it's very, I don't know, it just feels like appropriate for like a funeral, but in a kind of daisy twisted way. You know?
Yeah, that is very much a daisy twisted kind of a way. I don't know. I think people look at me with the hair and the tattoos, and they assume that I would have some kind of rock. Do you know what I'd probably have? Nessun Dorma.
Oh yeah.
Because it's one of my absolute favourites. We played this at my Nine's funeral because she loved it. She loved the 3 tenors. She loved Pavarotti. She couldn't speak a word of any other language, but loved him. I mean, to be fair, I don't know what half the words mean, but I love that song. I do, and I think that's a beautiful funeral song.
Yeah, I mean, Nessun Dorma was one of my mum's favourite songs, and obviously it's also like weirdly because it was one of my brother's favorite songs, or is one of my brother's favorite songs as well, because Nessun Dorma was used in football as well.
Yeah.
If you remember in the 90s. So it's an amazing song. I think there are, you know, it's got to be what's specific to you, whether it's something, you know, don't be afraid to have like a silly song that it like us, like for example, us all getting up and singing Mama by the Spice Girls. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I mean, but that was a song that my mum loved, obviously. And she always wanted her 4 children to sing it to her. And I think we never quite did. And so that was that kind of opportunity to finally, as a collective, to sing it to her.
Fabulous.
You know, I mean, that's the thing with like, I think that with an interesting conversation I had recently with my son actually on Halloween was, and I think you and me talked about this because we watched that what's that film that you like? The Day of the Dead one. The Book of Life, is it?
Oh, The Book of Life. Yeah, The Book of Life. Brilliant
And so
film. And Disney Coco ripped it off. That's the conversation we had. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were watching The Book of Life, which we'd never seen before, but we were like, oh, let's watch it. And I think it was like, I don't know, it was the day after Halloween or something. And
Yeah, it was.
It was talking about the Day of the Dead being November the 2nd and how they all go, and you know, any age they go to the grave, they celebrate. And funnily enough, I was having this conversation recently with someone through work, and where was he from? Poland. And he said they do it on the 1st of November, All Saints Day, or All
Saints Day, 1st of November.
So they do it in Poland as well. So on that day is the day that they go and they, as families, and go to the graves of those they've lost. But he also said, this guy, he said in Poland generally, graveyards are better kept up. Like, you know, you would see regular volumes of fresh flowers, etc., at graves, and little trinkets and things like that, much more so than you see in the UK.
I do think maybe this is, and maybe if there's anybody listening that's got more experience, I think it would be an interesting conversation to see how different cultures view death. And I love Day of the Dead, and is it? Oh, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it. It's where your pets come back first. It's all around the Day of the Dead, isn't it? The pets come back first, and then grandparents, and then you put out an offering. I think it's called a furta, but I'm probably going to get annihilated now for having pronounced that completely wrong. And it's a celebration, and I think that's lovely, and it's colourful and it's beautiful. I don't think we do death very well over here.
No, I don't either. I don't know if it's a religious thing. I don't know if it stems from kind of religious side of it or whatever. But I think there's a big gap there. But I think generally that we're not good at dealing with death, talking about death. As you say, it's all about going to a, you know, they're off to the farm, or they're off to, you know, there's no ever like, you know what I mean? Like, this is going to happen to everybody, and it is a part of life, and it's something that if we grow, I was very fearful of death until I lost my parents, and then actually I realized that the part of me that's them will never die. No. So, you know, they can go, and as much as it's absolutely heartbreaking, it's like you just have to get on with it. I mean, there's no nice way of going, you know, as hard as it is, you know, you have to put one foot in front of the other and keep going, you know.
Keep going. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, we're running out of time, Daisy, but this has been an absolute pleasure.
Can I just say one more thing?
You can.
Because you knew, I mean, obviously I like to have the last word. No.
You always have to have the last word.
And that was, I mean, one of the things that me and my son like to do is walk around graveyards.
We used to do grave rubbings.
Yeah. Well, we like to go, and my son likes to try and find like the oldest grave. So, like, you know, we found one that was like 16 something once. Yeah. You know, a long time ago. But it's funny, recently we went to one on Anglesey, and actually I was there because there was a memorial in this graveyard to a work-related accident where people died, and obviously me being in health and safety, you know. And he asked the question, he said, do you think graveyards are scary? And I was like, no, I think they're beautiful. Like, some of the gravestones are beautiful, the flowers, the trees, the general setting, I think it's beautiful. But he said, why do then people think that there's going to be like ghosts? And he said, and then he's 9, he said, I think that if there were ghosts, they would come back and be nice people, because they would just be your family members.
Oh, that's like, really wise.
Very freaky. They would just be the people popping out of their graves going, oh, hi, it's Deirdre.
Yeah, I agree. I also had this very similar conversation. It wasn't with a 9-year-old, it was with a 30-year-old the other day. And I was talking about buying a big old, potentially haunted house. And they said, oh, wouldn't you be scared that it's haunted? I said, well, it's not the dead you have to worry about, it's the living, which...
Yeah, it comes back down to that. It comes back down to that Scooby-Doo comment, isn't it? That, you know, monsters, there's no such thing as monsters. There's just people who wear the scary masks, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And on that
I just wanted to throw that one in there as we were talking about.
No, I think it's a really good point. So for anybody listening, please, if you have got an interest in health and safety, Daisy managed to sneak a few little snippets of health and safety in there. Please go over and give Health and Safety Angels a follow on TikTok, or you're on Spotify and all other podcast providers.
Yes.
And I hope, Daisy, you'll come back and join us for another episode where we take a light-hearted view of some of the other things, the other subjects around this.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, my gorgeous friend.
Thank you. I'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.